Story 1. I work as an engineer. I do some consulting on the side, but typically only for people I know and as a favor. A good friend asked me to help his in-laws, who were doing some fairly massive renovations and additions. I agreed solely because he asked me to. This is not something I have any interest in or need to do, except as a favor. It's an old house and had "can of worms" written all over it with some of the changes they wanted to make. Now, he warned me that the mother-in-law can be unpleasant, but that was an understatement. She seemed to think that because I was being paid, I charged probably 1/10 what a business would. She could snap her fingers at me like I was a servant. I had a few unpleasant emails with her, but it was tolerable. She was rude when I pointed out issues with their plans, but nothing too extreme. That changed when I started trying to find a time to stop by and inspect a few areas of the house to verify some information. I offered times to stop by on the weekend, but that didn't work for her. I tried evening times, still a no. Nope, she wanted me to stop by during my office work hours because that was best for her. When I told her no, and that this gets done on the weekends or in the evening, she went from rude to incredibly hostile. She told me that she was paying me, which made me chuckle, and that I was supposed to work with her availability, not the other way around. I copied my friend on the email chain, told them I was out, and wished them fun working with whoever they ended up hiring. My friend apologized, and I said no worries, it's not my problem anymore. She emailed back, quite stunned that I was walking away, telling me that this was not how business is conducted. I didn't bother responding. About 3 weeks later, I got an email from the husband, now asking if I would reconsider. He promised that his wife would not speak to me or be involved in any way. I heard from my friend that while the new quotes they received came back much higher, which was still tolerable for them, it was the waiting period that caused problems. They had just bought this house and wanted to move in as soon as possible, but it was an incredibly busy time of year for the industry. It turns out, when the companies you reach out to are overwhelmed with work, and you have a potentially complicated and messy project, they are not exactly eager to take on your business. So now, they are going to lose the tradespeople they had lined up, because the design process would be delayed by a month or two. I passed on the request, as I found it difficult to believe she would truly stay out of it, and I had no desire to step in and fix things for her. My friend didn't mind. He said it was nice watching her attitude bring on consequences that actually affected her. Story 2. I was going to post this on my main account before I came to my senses. This isn't really a throwaway, but more of an account I'll use to share stories about my entitled family, mostly my mom. Before you assume I'm exaggerating or making things up and start joking about Sweet Home Alabama, believe me, I wish this were made up. Unfortunately, it's an actual situation I'm dealing with. We are Dominican. I don't know if that changes anything, but I figured I'd mention it. And just to be clear, I really dislike that song. I'm a 20-year-old guy. My cousin is 19 and a girl. Spanish was my first language. I have a third cousin in the Dominican Republic. Things aren't easy for her there. Her family is not well off, and her mom is a bit neglectful. At this point, it feels like my mom cares more about her than she does about me. But whatever. My cousin deserves support. She's a good kid, does well in school, and wants to move to the United States to study nursing. The issue is, she's not a legal citizen. Now here's where things start to get truly bizarre. My mom decided that the best solution would be for me to fly to the Dominican Republic in June or July and marry my third cousin to make her legal. She actually brought this up a few years ago, but I assumed she was joking. Apparently, she wasn't. She brought up the plan again recently, only this time she was serious. She even talked about how she already booked flights to the Dominican Republic. Wait, what? I'm in a relationship already, and when I reminded my mom of this, she told me flat out that she doesn't care about my personal life. All she cares about is going to the Dominican Republic and pushing me to marry my cousin. Thankfully, I talked to my partner about all this, and they were really supportive. Due to the pandemic and the uncertainty of whether things might get worse, I think it's safe to say we're not flying there anytime soon. But for some reason, my mom still acts like the trip is happening. To summarize, I marry my third cousin, stay married for a year, then we get an amicable divorce. Any money that's made from this arrangement, if there is any, goes straight into my mom's pocket. When I try to refuse outright, it's met with yelling, physical intimidation, and threats to kick me out. I feel like I can't talk to any other family members about this because I don't know how they'll react or what might happen. I feel completely stuck. I don't have the financial means to live on my own yet, and my mom is clearly banking on that. She knows I rely on her roof and support, and she's using that to push this plan through like it's a done deal. Every time I push back, it escalates. The conversations aren't just tense, they get loud. And sometimes she throws things or slams doors just to make her point. She's always been dramatic, but this is a new level. I've tried reasoning with her. I explained that marrying someone for immigration reasons, especially a family member, isn't just morally uncomfortable, but it can also lead to serious legal problems. But she just brushes it off. She says things like, "People do this all the time," or "It's just on paper, you'll be fine." She treats it like it's no big deal, but for me, it is. A really big one. This isn't just about paperwork or helping someone out. It's about being forced into something I want no part of, by someone who's supposed to have my best interests at heart. I love my cousin as family. She's sweet and ambitious and doesn't deserve the difficult situation she's in. But that doesn't mean marrying her is the right solution. My partner and I have talked at length about what to do next. They've been patient, kind, and understanding. Still, it's been incredibly stressful. I feel like I'm being asked to choose between my own future and someone else's desperate shortcut, and my mom is making that choice even harder by threatening to ruin my life if I don't go along with it. What's worse is that my cousin doesn't even know all the details. I think she might be aware that something is going on, but I'm not sure she realizes the extent of what my mom is trying to pull. I don't blame her. And I'm definitely not angry with her. But I'm worried that if she finds out, she might feel embarrassed or even used. I wish I had someone in my family I could trust with this, but I'm scared to say anything. I don't want to start a firestorm that gets out of control. I don't know who would take my side, and I'm terrified that speaking up will only make things worse at home. Right now, I'm just trying to keep my head down and figure out a plan. I've been quietly looking into job options and scholarships to help me move out. Maybe even apply for financial assistance so I can stand on my own. I want to get to a point where I can say no and really mean it without having to worry about losing everything in the process. It's frustrating and painful and deeply unfair. But for now, I'm holding on to the hope that I'll find a way out of this situation. I just needed to get this off my chest, and maybe put it out there in case anyone else has been through something similar. Story 3. Double McTime here. This happened a few days ago. So, my manager is something of a goofball. He's exactly the kind of weirdo that I like to work under, and is always joking about something, even when he's in a bad mood. Luckily, he's also willing to take care of business at work when necessary, and is exactly what my workplace needs. We have a group chat app specifically for our workplace, where every employee of our store and every supervisor above us, up to the franchise owners, can see. On a weekly basis, my manager posts our week's schedule to the group chat so that everyone has access, and those who don't use the app or have a smartphone use the paper copy that's posted in store. Right on time, my manager posts the schedule and a bit of text, joking about being a benevolent overlord, and that he demands gifts in exchange for this week's schedule to be deposited in a box in the manager's office at the beginning of your next shift. Of course, we all knew he was joking, but I had to ask what everyone was thinking. "Is mayonnaise a gift?" He responds with, "Put it in the box." 8-bet. See, my manager knows me well enough to understand that I enjoy shenanigans. However, he didn't expect me to actually bring him mayonnaise as a gift first thing in the morning. After a long discussion in the group chat about possible delivery methods for the mayo in question, with suggestions such as coating the bottom of a Lego brick and then freezing it out of spite, and mayonnaise cake, except instead of a cake with mayo in the batter, it's a loaf of bread with an inch-thick layer of mayo. I decided on my plan. Before work, I stopped by the good old Golden Arches. I grab breakfast from there fairly often, so I figured that was my best option. I pulled up to the window to pay for my order and asked the poor lady for a strange favor. And the way she looked at me when I asked if I could pay them to fill a small drink cup with mayo was priceless. And I was a bit defeated when she offered me packets. I considered momentarily asking for it in an ice cream cone, but I decided to take what I could get before she called the police. I arrive at the store and immediately approach my manager and try to hand him a dozen packets of McDonald's brand light mayo. He tells me to take it to the office and put it in the box, which I do. We have a laugh and get on with our day. Well, toward the end of my shift, it's time for a secondary MC. He's at the front behind the counter, and the store is completely devoid of customers. He loudly yells that he needs me to feed him a packet of that mayo, because he's got his hands full and can't do it himself. Sure thing. I walk my happy self to that manager's office, snag a pack of mayo, and rip the corner right off that jerk. I can hear him at the front, laughing and being a goofball, having already forgotten what he had ordered me to do, and his eyes got real big when he saw me approaching with that mayo. I told him, "Open up." To his credit, he did, and I poured that entire packet of McDonald's brand light mayo directly into his mouth. And for our coworkers that weren't present, I posted in group chat, "I can finally say that I've fed my manager a pouch of mayo like the world's most terrifying baby bird." Got a few laughs. Felt nice. On to the fallout. Nothing super terrible, thankfully, but my manager had a meeting with the franchise owners the next day, had been planned long before the mayo conversation took place. He returned from that meeting and pulled me aside, and said that the owners asked him to talk to me about being professional in our group chat, and that my comment about feeding him mayo like a baby bird was inappropriate, and that it probably shouldn't happen in store again. He wasn't being seriously reprimanded, as they were laughing too, but man, was it great to hear that even the owners were getting in on the fun. Story 4. Some background first off. I am agoraphobic, which for those who don't know means that I have frequent panic and anxiety attacks, so I almost never leave home and even minor tasks can be stressful to me. Second, I live in the same apartment complex as a childhood friend who helps me out because of my condition. We will call him Greg, since he is in charge of maintenance for this and several other apartment complexes. Management knows about my condition. Third, I got a kitten a couple months ago to keep me company and named him Hobbs, after Calvin and Hobbes. Lastly, Greg has a son who we will call Jacob. This story starts a couple weeks after I brought Hobbs home. After hearing about the kitten, Jacob brought a group of kids over, and they came in to play with Hobbs for a while I did some cleaning. One of the kids, Caleb, kept saying how he wanted to keep Hobbs, and even asked me if he could have him. Obviously I said no, and thought that he was joking anyway, so I thought nothing of it. The problem is that Caleb started showing up at my door every single day to see Hobbs and knocking on my door repeatedly about 20 times a day. Greg has made Jacob aware of my condition, so he knows that a lot of the time I just don't have the energy to deal with a bunch of kids, and he was nice enough to pull Caleb away, for which I am very grateful. One day, I woke up to find my back door wide open, and I immediately started to panic. Hobbs is obviously gone, and this sends me into an anxiety attack. Eventually, I calm down and hope that he will come back on his own. Meanwhile, I have been trying to figure out who came into my apartment. At this point, Greg, who knows everyone in the neighborhood since he does maintenance, points out that the couple who lives behind me has a camera hooked up to their window watching their car, which happens to be right next to my back door. He asks them if they can check the footage, and after hearing the story they happily oblige to help out. I was fairly certain it was Caleb, but didn't want to accuse a child with no evidence, and I'm glad I didn't, because it wasn't Caleb who came into my apartment. It was his mother, the Karen of our story. She opened my back door, walked straight in, and came out moments later with my cat. The neighbors even checked the nights prior, and she had been checking my door every night for several days, probably longer, but recordings were automatically deleted after several days, so no saying how long she was doing this. I know a lot of people are going to tell me I should have immediately called the police, but please try to understand. This situation was already very stressful for me, and getting the police involved would only make it worse. Instead, Greg and I went over to Karen's apartment to confront her and get Hobbs back. I agreed to let Greg do the talking, and we knocked on the door. Karen answers the door with a, "What do you want?" and Greg starts talking immediately. Now Greg is very charismatic and is a no-nonsense kind of guy when things get serious. So I'm paraphrasing this speech very poorly, but it went something like this. "Hey Karen, we know you have this poor kid's cat in there. So here is how this is going to go. You are going to give the cat back and apologize. Then you are going to have Caleb apologize for knocking on the poor kid's door all day every day and forbid him from going over there anymore. And if you don't, we are going to get the police involved, not just for breaking and entering, but because I know for a fact that you have drugs in this apartment. I see them every time you put in a maintenance request, which is almost every week. So let's cut the part where you deny it all and jump to the part where you tell me how this is going to play out." During his speech, Karen's face went from annoyance to indignation to worry and then to anger. By this time Caleb is in the background and we can see him holding Hobbs. Karen looked like she was having an intense internal battle. On one hand she was cornered, but on the other hand she could never possibly be in the wrong because the world revolves around her. Finally she speaks and says, "You don't have proof. I bought this cat for my son and you can't prove that I didn't." To which Greg replies, "Are you absolutely sure that's how you want to do this?" Karen then responds with the most snarky entitled "screw you" that I think any person has ever conjured in the history of mankind. She then slams the door in our faces. By this point, we were out of options. I agree to call the police and report the incident. We get the recordings from the neighbors and wait for the police to arrive. The officers show up, and after hearing the story and watching the video, they immediately went over to confront Karen. Even from a distance, I could see her mouth drop into a perfect comical O shape when she saw two police officers at her door. The officers explained to her that I was not pressing charges if she just gave the cat back. As regulars of this subreddit know though, you can always rely on a Karen to dig in her heels and double down on their bad decisions. I could not hear exactly what was said, but heard Karen getting louder and more enraged every time she spoke. Finally, she crossed the line and tried to shove one of the officers. Next thing we knew, she was face down on the concrete and was being told her rights. I doubt she heard any of it though, because she was screeching all the typical Karen lines like, "You can't do this to me," and "I know such and such, I'll have you fired." It was actually a pretty pathetic display to see from a grown woman. By now, Caleb was in tears, still holding my cat. He walked up to one of the officers, legs shaking, and handed him the cat. It almost broke my heart when he asked if they could let his mom go now. The officer was kind, but explained that his mother had assaulted a cop and was likely going to jail, so I did get Hobbs back, but for a week felt awful about making Caleb see all that and probably scarring him for life. Fortunately, there is a happy ending here. Now when Karen got arrested, Greg knew I wouldn't press charges, so she would likely only be charged for the assault, which is why he decided to inform management, and they pressed charges on my behalf for breaking and entering into one of their properties, as well as drug trafficking out of another property. Long story short, she is in prison. Here is the happy ending for her kid though. Apparently, his dad had lost a very long custody battle a couple years prior, and this little incident naturally meant that he now had custody. Greg met him once when they came to get Caleb's things from Karen's apartment, and apparently he was a very nice man. Polar opposite of Caleb's banshee of a mother. She had gained full custody of Caleb mainly by lying, but it seems that Caleb will now be raised by a competent and rational adult. Story 5. Backstory. This happened in the 1990s. My parents own a 40-acre farm in the middle of nowhere. After 5 years, the trailer next door that was on 2.5 acres went up for sale. The dogs were put in a pen to go outside when the new neighbors were moving in. The husband looked like he killed his own mother and enjoyed it, but the dogs didn't even give off a whimper. The wife, when she came up the driveway, the dogs went nuts and wanted to tear into her. Our dogs are not violent, but we came later to understand why. My mom, being the nice southern lady that she is, went next door to introduce herself and wanted to know more about the new neighbor. It all seemed well until the wife asked who owned the field behind her house. Mom bashfully replied that it was hers and my dad's. After that, the conversation got awkward and Mom excused herself. A couple of weeks later, Mom and Dad were coming home from shopping and found 3 kids, no older than 7, all over our farm equipment. Mom and Dad chased them off to the neighbor's house. My mom went over and asked why those kids were over there. They found out it was the neighbor's grandchildren. When Mom told her that they needed to stay away from the farm equipment because one of them would get hurt, she said, "I don't care if one of them gets killed. I want that field one way or the other," pointing to the field behind her house. Mom and Dad immediately called the sheriff and an attorney to find out what they could do to protect themselves. They both said that they needed no trespassing signs scattered all over the field if possible, especially where the equipment is normally stored and around the property. When Mom and Dad did that, the signs around the property were disappearing. One time, as Mom was coming down from a tree to put it high up to where they had to come on the property to get it down, a gun blast hit the sign above her head, and off in the distance was the wife yelling smugly, "Oops, I guess my gun went off accidentally." Things cooled down only when my brother came home on weekends from college to watch the house. Plus, my parents made their schedule more random during the week, so the neighbors didn't know if anyone was there or not. However, they were still causing problems like small things disappearing from our yard, and them saying that it must be some druggie looking to steal anything for drugs. It was so bad at one point in time that Mom and Dad asked if they could buy their property. The property was worth $50,000 at the time. My parents offered $60,000. The wife said, "Sure, you can take my property at $250,000. Take it or leave it." Even my parents' property at the time was not worth that much, so they left it. However, it took a turn for the better 2 years after the offer. The husband wanted a divorce from his wife. This was a grand total of 4 years of dealing with her. Side note, the husband never met my parents until he moved out a week prior. He said his wife told him that my parents, especially my mom, were crazy and for his safety needed to stay away from them after my mom's initial visit. When he finally found out that his wife was the one that was crazy, he left her. About a month after that, the husband came back talking about how the divorce was going and wanted to know if they were interested in the property. They told him about the offer 2 years ago, and he said he never heard about it, nor about his grandchildren coming over hoping that one of them would get hurt, but it didn't surprise him. When we told him how much we offered, he said, "The divorce attorney said that the sale of the house will be split 50-50. I don't care if you offer a nickel just to spite her." A week after that, the wife came to my parents' house asking if they were willing to buy at the $60,000 they offered initially. Mom and Dad said that they will buy it at what the appraiser will say it is worth. Because of the depreciation of the trailer and because the wife didn't take care of the trailer, it was appraised at $40,000. Mom was ready to be spiteful and offer $30,000, but Dad disagreed and said that would be a good restart for a guy that had to live through this for all those years. Story 6. My father was a taxi driver for years, and after this incident, he immediately quit and became a truck driver. It was Saturday night. It was well past midnight, so already Sunday, around 3 a.m. My dad had just driven one person home when the dispatcher called him. 3:03 and my dad receives the destination and fare. Disco Club X, 2 women, one of them, Anna. 3:08 m, my dad's at the entrance to Club X. 3:12 m, 2 girls enter my dad's car. Both of them are around 25 years old, and also both drunk as hell. Anna gives 2 addresses to my dad, first her apartment building, then her friend's house. 3:20 m, the car is at the first address. The other girl says that she has money to pay the full fare, so Anna leaves the car. She's very drunk and insecure on her feet. There's no light at the entrance to Anna's apartment building. My dad uses the headlamps of his car to shed light at the entrance of Anna's building, so that she can find the keys, open the door, and so on. This is a common practice among taxi drivers. Always make sure that a woman arrives at the destination safe and sound. 3:25 am, the car leaves the first address and heads for the second. 3:32 am, the car arrives at the second address. In the meantime, the second girl passed out. If there wasn't for this first stop, the total time to drive from Club X to the second address would be less than 10 minutes. By the way, and this detail is relevant for the later events. 3:33 am, my dad leaves his car, locks all the doors and enters the courtyard. This is also a standard procedure if your fare is unconscious, and even more so if the fare is a woman. Do not touch her. If you are at her destination, call someone from there to pick her up and pay for the fare. If there's no one at the destination to help you with her, call the ambulance or police. So, my dad knew that it was Saturday night, that they were at a disco and had a lot of drinks, and he had no reason to call the emergency, at least not before he tried to get help from a family member. 3:34 am, he rings at the house doors. 3:36 am, the girl's father opens the door. Entitled man, who are you and what the hell are you doing here at this hour? My dad, I'm sorry to wake you up, sir, but I'm a taxi driver and I've just driven your daughter home. My daughter? Where is she? She's in the car, passed out. Please bring her in and put her to sleep. She'll be sober in a few hours. But she's more than 1 hour late. She should have been here around 2. Sir, I received the call from the disco club at around 3 am, dropped her friend off along the way, and here I am now, with your daughter passed out in my car. Please come to the car to take her in and to her bed. What did you do to her? Still standing at the doorstep and accusing. Nothing. I drove her here, home, to you. I'm a taxi driver, that's what I do. But my daughter doesn't drink much. She would never allow herself to be so drunk as to pass out in a stranger's car. Sir, she and her friend were already drunk when they entered my car at Club X. And I'm not a stranger, I am a taxi driver. She must have been given something. Sir, I don't know anything about it. I received the call around 3 o'clock to pick up your daughter and her friend at Club X. You should ask your daughter about it in the morning when she sobers up. Please come and take your daughter out of my car and settle the fare. Tomorrow, you can speak to her and her friend, who'd confirm everything I said. She called me around 1:30 and she didn't sound drunk at all. She told me she'd be home by 2, and 2 hours later, she's unconscious on your back seat. I received the call from Club X only at around 3 am, sir. You can ask your daughter tomorrow when she wakes up what happened at Club X between 2 and 3 am. But right now, you should bring her in. I'm not allowed to have any physical contact with my fare, and she can't get out of the car by herself. You're obviously lying, because you're telling me you needed a half an hour to get here from Club X. What? I never said that. Yes, you did. You said you picked up my daughter and Anna at 3 am, and now it's past 3:30. I received a call from Club X after 3 am and picked them up at 3:10 or later, and I also dropped Anna off at her address along the way here. Sir, my car has a GPS tracker, and you can check my locations at any given time during my shift. You can call my dispatcher and ask her for the timestamps. She'll send it to you first thing after I've made sure my fare has safely arrived at her destination. No, she hasn't safely arrived at the destination. She's unconscious in your back seat. Because she had too many drinks, sir, before she entered my vehicle. That is not my fault or responsibility. I would have helped her out myself if I could, but I am not allowed to touch my fare. As I said, my daughter would never have too many drinks by herself. I want to know what was given to her. Then bring your daughter in and to bed, and in a few hours when she sobers up, ask her what happened at Club X or in my car. Ask Anna and my dispatcher as well. But right now I need your daughter out of my vehicle before she throws up or something. I'm not going to contaminate a possible crime scene. Sir, there's no crime scene in my cab, only your daughter who needs help to get out of the vehicle and into her bed. She'll be fine after some sleep. She's not the first fare to pass out in my cab during the ride home. It happens, and it's not a big deal. The important thing is that she's home safe, and that you can check the last 30 minutes of my shift if you want, with no problem whatsoever. Now, please, help your daughter out of my car. I'm calling the police. You know what, please do. 10 minutes later, there were 2 policemen at the door. In the meantime, the lovely daughter on the back seat of the cab made a huge mess all over the place. She emptied her bladder on the seat and threw up on the floor and back seat and all over herself. The policeman called my dad's dispatcher, and in less than 1 minute, established that my dad was totally innocent and that he did the right thing by asking the fare's father to help him with the passed-out woman. They told the father to bring the daughter in and then told him to leave my dad alone. The man was furious, but had to do what they told him. However, the story didn't end there. 2 days later, my dad's boss received the call from the entitled man. The boss already knew what happened that night. Entitled man, I demand the fare I had to pay refunded, as I'm going to press charges against your driver. Boss, on what account, sir? For molesting my daughter. I've already spoken to my lawyer. Feel free to do that, sir. I hope your lawyer informed you of the fact that we have timestamps for the vehicle in question, and that the entire case can fire back on you hard, sir. My daughter doesn't even remember that they called a taxi and that she ever entered your car. Your daughter's loss of memory is irrelevant, sir, as the video surveillance at the entrance to Club X confirmed that your daughter willingly entered the vehicle with her friend at 3:12 am on Sunday. And I'm sure you already know that your daughter's friend herself called our dispatcher from her mobile phone. My lawyer told me that your drivers are responsible for their fares and their well-being while they're in your cars. Exactly, and the only thing my driver did wrong was ringing at your door, instead of calling the police immediately. He didn't want your daughter to spend a night in prison to sober up and wanted to avoid an embarrassing situation for her. So he made a mistake and asked you to help your daughter out of the car. I'm going to sue you both for this. Be my guest, as I already said. And for the record, we're not going to refund the fare. We'll send you a fat invoice for the car cleaning services and for the 24-hour loss of our vehicle and fares we lost thereby. Indeed, it happened as announced by both parties. The entitled man sued the company and lost epically. The company won, and the invoice at the end of the story was even fatter, and now included legal costs and all possible fines the judge could add to it, to teach the entitled man an important lesson about responsibility and false accusations and disrespect. My dad decided to become a truck driver, as truck drivers never have to deal with drunk fares or entitled parents.